Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. A horrific attack in Las Vegas has become the single deadliest mass shooting in the history of this country. At least 59 people have been killed. More than 500 are injured after a gunman, a retired accountant, perched in the Mandalay Bay resort window and opened fire on a country music concert. Our own Trace Gallagher is in Las Vegas tonight on top of the developments as they come in. Trace.
Tucker, we now know there are 4 crime scenes: the Mandalay Bay directly behind me, the concert venue, as well as the home of the suspect, Stephen Paddock, in Mesquite, Nevada, which is about 75 miles north of here, and his home in Reno, Nevada, which is in the process right now of being raided. The Sheriff's Department also told us earlier they found 18 guns inside that home in Mesquite, along with numerous explosives and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Inside the Mandalay Bay, we now know they found 17 guns, 16 rifles, and a handgun, and we should note it is still very unclear how many of those guns were converted to automatic weapons. The sheriff would not say. But we should note the sheriff did say that over the course of several days, this man was actually bringing suitcases in of ammunition and weapons up to the room. Remember, he was in that room for 4 days, and this attack took significant planning. It was a 2-bedroom suite. He hammered holes in 2 of the windows to give him a better aim at the concert goers below. We should also note that he bought some of the guns legally in Arizona and others legally in Nevada. His family says that Stephen Paddock has no religious affiliation, no political affiliation, and when they were asked about motivation, they didn't really say. They describe him as a millionaire, saying he owns homes in Florida, in Texas, in Nevada, and that he owns an airplane. He does very well. He's a retired accountant. But they also note that the sheriff was asked tonight that he has gambling debts, or he has a severe gambling habit, and we know that over the past 3 or 4 weeks he made at least 4 or 5 separate bets totaling upwards of $20,000 or $30,000. What we do not know is whether or not he won or lost those bets. The sheriff was asked if that might be part of the motivation, and he did not comment on that. And we should also say that the girlfriend in this whole case, Marilou Danley, she seemed to be dismissed earlier in the day when the sheriff saying that she was not part of this crime at all, but at tonight's press conference we learned that she is in Tokyo, and the Sheriff's Department here in Clark County would desperately like to talk to her to find out exactly what she knew about all of these guns and any planning that might have gone in to this horrific attack, the worst mass shooting in history at the Mandalay Bay behind me and the concert grounds about 400 yards across the street from the hotel.
So, Trace, really quickly, a lot about this story doesn't make any sense at all, at least from our perspective. Are the authorities you're talking to, do they seem as baffled as the rest of us?
They're baffled at why this happened. I mean, look, they know that there was apparently no tie to terrorism here, okay? So they've kind of ruled that out. There's been no link. They might find something, but there's been absolutely no trail on social media that links him to any religious group or any political group. So they believe that terrorism is not a motive here. So they're as baffled as we are at why this man did this. I mean, we're talking about a guy who retired. He came to Mesquite. He's a private pilot. He likes to gamble. Everybody who's come in contact with him says that he is, you know, he's an affable guy, and that he's sometimes standoffish, but they would never expect this. And his family earlier today said they think that he might have snapped, but then the police counter back saying this is not the case of somebody who snapped. You don't meticulously and methodically plot something like this for 4 days if you snapped. A lot of thought went into this, a lot of hate went into this, and this is not the case of just someone going off the deep end suddenly. Tucker.
Well, we are out of motives. Trace Gallagher, thank you for that update. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Angelina Canito was there last night, a witness to this attack, and she joins us tonight. Angelina, can you hear me?
I can.
There you are. What did you think when this first happened? Did you know what it was?
No, we didn't. We heard the first two shots and saw some smoke. And so initially we thought it was fireworks, which made us uncomfortable in itself. So we started to walk away from the crowd. And then when the rapid gunfire started, that's when we realized it was guns and started sprinting. And everybody started running.
You were in the crowd?
Yes.
Could you tell where it was coming from?
No, I thought it was coming from within the crowd. I thought somebody was holding a gun up in the air and shooting. And so I think everybody thought that because they were getting down on the ground every time that shots were being fired. And if we had known that the shots were coming from above, I don't think anybody would have done that, because that just put them in a terrible position.
Of course. We're getting reports that there was a stampede at points and that people were injured during it. Did you see any of that?
Yeah, I did. As we were running out, a barricade had fallen over, and a man in the yellow security shirt had fallen on his face, and I watched another man run right over him like he was the pavement. And that was probably the only person that I saw get run over. But, I mean, people were pushing and shoving and jumping fences and falling on each other, just trying to get out as quickly as possible.
It sounds like the worst. And where did you wind up? How did you get out?
Well, I mean, it was just by the grace of God that we were already towards the outskirts of the crowd by the time that the rapid gunfire had begun. And so we quickly made it out of the gates because they had already fallen to the ground. We ran out the backside of the concert and just kept running up the street and didn't stop. I mean, we ran through the Tropicana, the New York. We passed T-Mobile Arena. I think we ended up at Monte Carlo. Like, we were so far away from where it had happened because we just did not stop. We did not turn back.
Well, that's always the right move, especially last night. Angelina, thank you for joining us tonight. Glad you're okay.
Thank you.
Brian Hopkins is a musician who played at the concert last night. He was backstage before the shooting. Then he went out to enjoy the fans out in front. The shots began. He ran back and hid in a freezer with several fans, probably why he survived. Brian Hopkins joins us tonight. Brian, where were you when the shots rang out?
I was actually out front. I had just walked back from backstage, and I actually didn't play this event. I had played the first year, and I had come to support friends. So I said my hellos and then walked out the front. And my best friend and I, my guitar player, we were staring at the stage, literally almost in front of it, and I had a couple of friends standing in front of me. And when we figured out what it was, a guy went down right in front of us, another guy about 4 feet in front of him, next to him, and I turned to see what's going on, and two girls go down right behind us. And Ben grabs me and says, "Run." And you could see people running at us, and I grabbed the two girls in front of me, and we start running. And instead of sprinting, I didn't run towards the crowd the way they were going. I had just left backstage, and I separated from Ben because he went after one of our friends' wives, and he fell and almost got trampled. He got up and he said, "I'm running," and he took off. I lost him, and I ran through the backstage area, and that's when all you hear is bang, 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 bang. It's just coming, and you can hear it coming off the rooftop, off the stage above. And I started running, and I had them, and people were following me, and it stopped about 4 seconds, and then it started up again, and we run into a fence, a big fence. And I could have hopped that fence. I could have easily been over it, but there was no way. There were screaming people. There were people afraid they can't get over. And so there was a freezer. I didn't know it was a freezer, but it was a big trailer. and the door was propped open, and I could see somebody in there, and we just started throwing people inside this refrigerator. And once everybody got in, I jumped in with them, and I jumped in the middle, and I started comforting the two girls that I was helping. They started comforting. They were 24-year-old, 23-year-old, comforting people older than them, freaking out, screaming, and I meant to try and make a video for my parents, and this guy started screaming and pounding on the wall, and I just stopped what I was doing and had him sit down in front of me and take care of his wife or girlfriend or whatever. And then I went to the door to see if we could get out, and as soon as I opened a little bit, it just bang, 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 bang. I shut the door, and I looked at a friend of mine who was in there just a little bit of ways away from me, and I said, everything's going to be okay. And he looked at me and said, no, it's not. And we're just like, okay, this is not where it's going to end, not here. So we waited until there was silence. We were all cold, and we went to open up the door. We popped it open, he and I. One guy jumps on the thing, jumps over the fence, because somebody had put a ramp. And then the next guy jumped, and I asked him to stay. Can you help the ladies? Can you help people jump? It's a tall fence. I can get them over. So we started getting them over the fence, and they were just climbing, just attacking the fence. And then it came down to the two that they didn't leave me. I didn't know, I barely knew them, and they stayed with me. And I was trying to help them. I couldn't, so I grabbed them. And I remember we're going to find somewhere else to go. And there's a police officer running at me, sweaty face, screaming, and he said, this way, this way. And as soon as we got past him, that guy took off to where all the bad was. And he took off that direction as he's sending us off to safety. And I don't know if there was anyone behind me, but I just grabbed the girl's hands, and we were running, and there's a body, and another body, and another body. And then there was another body. In the body, the guy had got shot in the stomach, and his friends, they were over him, like trying to keep him alive, and there's no way he was still alive. And then that's when the girls with me started to panic and wanted to call their parents, and I'm just run, and we're crossing the street. And in the middle of the street, like this, there's a car with people hiding behind it, and the guy in the passenger seat is shot. And I couldn't stop. I'm trying to help people, and now I've got other people following me, and I just said, run to the dark, which is this right here, right behind us. That right there, that alley right there. And so we were running to this area because it was dark, but you could still see Mandalay Bay. We're not out of harm's way, and we're still just running. We don't know, by the way, when we were in that ice box, we had no idea if there were people running around shooting. We're hiding and trying to be quiet.
Well, of course. I mean, it sounds like the weirdest dream sequence ever, and a horrifying one.
And here's the thing, and I said this I just called one of the girls, Nicole, and I said, thank you for being she didn't act her age. She didn't freak out. They didn't freak out until they saw that. But it was so methodical. Let's go calmly. Let's calmly.
Brian, thank you for telling us your story.
Yes. Yeah.
Taking a second for me to digest it. I can't imagine how you feel right now. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everybody who had to go through it.
Forbes Riley was also there on the 10th floor of the Mandalay Bay when the shooting began and was trapped there for the duration of the attack. She joins us now. Forbes, you there?
Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. So you were in the hotel when this happened. How far from where the gunman was?
So I'm a TV presenter, and I was there for a party with Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington and Grant Cardone, and we were actually on the 46th floor in the foundation room. And we just decided to not go. All our guys went downstairs to play poker, and we saw this beautiful skyline. So we headed out to the skyline. You see the Mandalay Bay on your right, on your left side, and you saw the entire concert down below. And we're just taking photos. We're all kind of lined up there and having a great time. And all of a sudden, these fireworks went off, and pop, 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 all the fireworks. We're just kind of laughing and having a wonderful time. And the girl taking the photos said, "Oh my God, I think it's gunfire." gunfire, and we're all having this moment going, that can't possibly be gunfire. It was too rapid, too fast. And I just sent photos to your crew. We have video of this. You look down on the concert. Remember, we're 46 floors up. What we don't know at that moment is right below us to our left at about 7 o'clock is the gunman. It's impossible to imagine because it's all glass. There's no balconies. There's no way anybody could be doing that. And she said, I think there's bodies all over the ground. People are lying down. And we're literally telling her, no, they're just, if there's gunfire, people just kind of hitting the ground, it'll be fine. And it got weirder and weirder. They ushered us into the foundation room. And all of a sudden, the SWAT guys come in with big machine guns and start yelling at us, going, get down, get down. And we're thinking it's the bad guys. We're all thinking that we're under attack. And I bolted out back onto I was the only one, ran out to the patio, and like your friend just said, I'm hiding behind a potted plant thinking, oh my God, this is, there's going to be somebody walking around with a gun going to shoot me any minute. Worst moment of my life. Fortunately, we were nowhere in harm's way, I guess, if you turn the gun upwards. But from a vantage point, it's hard to believe. We all then got ushered back into the foundation room. I'm sorry, I'm really tired. We were locked down, and we were learning news the way you were. But for those of us in the room, we're thinking there's a bomb. We're hearing there's a bomb in the Bellagio, in the Flamingo, that there's 30 gunmen, that it's racist. We're hearing all of these crazy rumors. And absolutely, I mean, nobody freaked out. Everybody was very calm. But it has been a very, very long night, and yeah, I'm having a hard time.
I can't even imagine. And the truth is, we know not all that much more now than we did 12 or 18 hours ago. We still don't know very much about this man or why he did it, but I can imagine your panic when armed men come into your room and start yelling. I can't even imagine. Former Charlie, thank you for joining us. I'm glad you're okay.
Well, I am fine, and I'm happy to help out in any way. I have to tell you, the weirdest moment in my life was walking out this morning. They finally let us go after about 10 hours and seeing the Las Vegas Strip with no cars on it. The Mandalay Bay has nobody. There's nobody gambling or playing, and the mood here is pretty amazingly tragic. But
yeah, there's something really awful about that. Thank you very much. Well, the mayhem at the Mandalay Bay ended only when Stephen Paddock killed himself just before the police breached the door of his hotel room. We have actually sound of that happening. Here it is.
And on the suspect's door, I need everybody in that hallway to be aware of it and get back. We need to pop this and see if we get any type of response from this guy to see if he's in here or if he's actually moved out somewhere else.
Copy. All units on the 32nd floor. SWAT has explosive breach. Everyone in the hallway needs to move back. All units move back.
Breach, breach, breach.
There it is. One of the things that jumped out at everyone who listened to the audio of this attack last night was that it sounded like automatic weapons fire, which is unusual in this country. What exactly was this man wielding when he killed so many? Dr. Michael Bodden is a forensic pathologist and expert on bullet trajectories. Chris Goralnik is a former Marine and active shooter expert, and they both join us tonight. Chris, first to you. There's usually a lot of focus on the firearms, which may or may not be that relevant. But in this case, it maybe is relevant because it did sound like automatic weapons fire. Was it? And if so, what does that mean exactly?
Well, you can tell by the rate of firing. Good evening, Tucker. I'm sorry to be with you tonight for this reason, but the rate of fire is what we call cyclic rate, which is it's firing as fast as the gun's capable of firing. Yes. And to get it to do that is either it's a functionally automatic weapon from a manufacturer, which means while you hold down the trigger, it will continue to fire until it runs out of ammunition, or as you feed it, or it's a semi-automatic, and as fast as you can pull the trigger, rounds will go out. This seems to be a fully automatic sound from the background, whether it's 223 or 308 rounds, and we know from the undersheriff that he did confirm those rounds were found in those rifles. However, you can make these kits and you can get them and convert them on your own. So it's not too far off per se, but the deterrent to do it is horrible. The ATF has got a very strong hold on this.
Oh, yeah, and these you can't do that. Right. But what levels?
The misnomer is they are legal if you purchase them with a stamp.
Right. No, I know that, but what I don't understand is how hard is it? My understanding was you had to be a relatively talented gunsmith to do that, but you don't?
No, sir. I'm not going to tell you how on TV, but you can basically change a couple pieces within the mechanism of near the trigger and turn a semi-automatic weapon into a fully automatic weapon.
You get in a lot of trouble for that. I guess this guy, of course, didn't care. So, Doctor, what are pathologists learning as they examine the victims of this tragedy today? What will they be looking for?
Well, one of the things that the coroner's office pathologists will do is remove as many bullets as they can for the police, and the police will go around to the coroner's office and to each of the hospitals to get every bullet that's removed from every patient, and they will then be able to find out from which weapons the bullets came from. And this is to ensure that there wasn't a second shooter with another gun that wasn't present at the scene.
Right.
An issue that comes up will come up sometime. But the most important thing they're doing right now is to deal with the families who are at the office, and they want to know who's dead, and they want to get their loved one back. And the identification of the bodies is the first procedure that goes on in the coroner's office.
Right, of course it is. I wish we had more time. We're bumping up against a hard break, unfortunately. Michael and Chris, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you, Tucker.
Is there any way to protect crowds from events like the ones we saw last night in Las Vegas? Up ahead, we'll discuss security as we continue our coverage of today's breaking news. Plus, many politicians have responded today by demanding new gun laws. We'll ask a pro-gun Democrat, Henry Cuellar of Texas, if he thinks that will work. Stay tuned.
He brutally murdered more than 50 people and wounded hundreds more. It was an act of pure evil.
It wasn't hours after this event that some politicians in Washington called for new gun legislation in the wake of the shootings. Congressman Henry Cuellar represents the state of Texas. He's a Democrat. He had an A+ rating from the NRA. He joins us tonight to assess this. So, Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
So we don't even know the basic answers to the questions of why this happened. Does it seem a little premature to you to wade right into a complex debate like gun control within hours of this happening?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we need to wait, let the first responders, let the law enforcement find out exactly what happened, then we can have another debate. I mean, right now we pray for the families. We thank the first responders for doing a good job, but they still got a lot of work because it's, just listen to all those stories. It just doesn't make sense. He doesn't fit the pattern of somebody that would do something like this, especially somebody at that particular age.
So you grew up on a ranch in Texas hunting. You must have been surrounded by guns because ranches are filled with guns.
I learned at a very young age from my father how to hunt.
Yeah.
So did my brothers. In fact, I got 3 brothers that are peace officers. So we've been around guns from a very young age. And again, even if you take guns away, we know that somebody can kill somebody using an airplane, a knife, a truck. I mean, there's so many
a pressure
items.
cooker.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think we need to just let the law enforcement do the work, and we can always have time for a political debate.
It's just when people come out immediately after an event like this without knowing any of the facts, it suggests to the rest of us that they've been kind of waiting for an opportunity to push a pre-existing agenda on the country, and it makes people really nervous. Can you see why?
Well, not that they're waiting for the next event, but I think it's, we have had several events in the past years, and I think there are some people that believe in gun control. I don't believe in gun control. I think, you can have responsible people do the right thing with a gun, but unfortunately, sometimes you get a situation like this that it's hard to explain, but just taking guns away from everybody is not going to solve the issue.
A lot of people keep saying that. I mean, can you think of a single place in the United States that has become safe because of gun control?
No.
Right, and I don't think anyone else can think of one either. So then why do people keep proposing it?
Well, there's some people that just feel that guns are the problem, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. As you know, I don't believe that. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment, but there are some people who feel that you got to take guns away.
This is a totally non-political and sincere question, and I don't know the answer to it. There were no mass shootings when you were a kid. There was one, University of Texas, Chuck Whitman, 1962.
That's right.
Who had a brain tumor. But they weren't a feature of American life. What's changed? What is going on, actually?
I don't know. But again, you got to look at every individual case and let's see what the investigators find out. I mean, there's got to be something. Let's see what happened in this particular case.
Yeah. I just hope that we in the press aren't adding to it. It's something that we think about a lot. We don't want to be part of the problem.
I mean, the stories that we heard are just, I mean, it's incredible.
They are incredible. It's incredible, incredibly sad. Thank you, Congressman. Great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. This is a Fox News alert. A mass shooting in Las Vegas has become the single deadliest shooting in American history. At least 59 murdered, more than 500 injured. The scale is almost unimaginable. Fox's Jonathan Hunt joins us from Las Vegas with what we're learning about the victims of this crime. Jonathan?
Tucker, tonight we're at the University Medical Center, the only level 1 trauma center in Las Vegas, and the recipient, therefore, of many of the most badly wounded. In the last few minutes, we got an update from officials here who say tonight, of the 104 patients they received, 12 remain in critical condition. It was a scene of some chaos, as you can imagine, last night, as the ambulance services here in Vegas were hard-pressed to get every one of those 527 wounded to the hospitals. There were stories of people stopping in pickup trucks and other vehicles and bringing those suffering from gunshot wounds to hospitals like this here at UMC. The officials also told us that some of the gunshot wounds were just terrible, the like of which, even with years of experience, they had never seen before because of the caliber of the weapons that were used, Tucker. Because of the severity of many of those wounds, an urgent appeal went out for blood donations, and Las Vegas responded in a quite extraordinary fashion. At every single blood donation center set up around the city, there have been lines hour after hour, 6 to 8 hours in some cases, and officials say they're now booked up with blood donation appointments through Thursday. But given the amount of people they are still caring for, they still need more. But that was one example, Tucker, of what I saw last week in Mexico City as I covered the aftermath of the earthquake there. The worst of times so often brings out the best in the human spirit. Tucker?
Boy, that is always true, isn't it, Jonathan? Thank you for joining us today. Last night's attack in Las Vegas and similar attacks in Orlando, Manchester, Nice, France have all shown the potential for terrorists to kill massive numbers of people by targeting massive events, concerts and gatherings like that. Is there anything we can do to keep these events safe? Dan Bongino was a former Secret Service agent. Aaron Cohen is a counterterrorism expert, and they join us tonight. Aaron, first to you. You can think of ways that you could lock down events like this, but they would basically entail making it almost impossible to get to the events. Is there a way to secure an arena or a place with 20,000 people that is consistent with the way we live now? Or we have to change completely the way we live in order to be safe?
I don't think you have to change completely, Tucker. In fact, the Israeli model, which I think is extremely applicable to all soft targets here in the United States, including our airports, is very applicable. And the reason why is, let me give you an example. We don't have people take off shoes at airports. One of the most simple security elements that could have been applied here, or that needs to be applied moving forward with all venues related to soft targets where you have large crowds of people. Had those bags been checked at that hotel, and I know that sounds crazy, but bag checks would have kept weapons from being brought up to those rooms. So the Israeli approach isn't necessarily designed to put a cork in people's lifestyle. There's a way to move security along efficiently, but that's also scientific but honest, and the security has to be honest. So bag checks could have easily kept guns from getting up to that 32nd floor. I mean, the guy had to carry ammunition, hundreds of rounds. He had to carry automatic weapons, which is what we know they were. They got to be put in back. So bag checks would have been a very basic step, and I think that that's something that needs to be looked at.
It's a big deal, though. I mean, spend a week in Israel. I like Israel, but you go to Israel, it's not like the United States at all. I mean, they don't have freedom of movement like we do. I mean, that's a different level of security. Dan Bongino, are Americans ready for that?
It's doable.
I mean,
it's doable.
It works, but are Americans ready for it, Dan?
I don't think so, Tucker. And the problem you have with setting up, say, bag checks are not a bad idea, but say magnetometers combined with bag checks, is you have in essence the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting, where you have a clean area, sterile, clean and devoid of all weapons, but then you have an area right outside where you can just engage people lining up either at a bag check or magnetometers. I think one practical step we can all agree on going forward is mid and large-sized police departments are probably going to look at building up their counter-sniper teams, and any type of big outdoor rally now, obviously now that this has been put in the idea of every terrorist in the world watching this, you're probably going to see a counter-sniper and a spotter at these events looking at these window matrices and keeping them safe.
Tucker, I don't disagree with your with your guest. And Dan, you and I park our cars in the same garage, and we both want the best for the country as far as security, but counter-snipers aren't going to keep bags or guns from being brought up into hotels. They're not going to keep them from getting up to the 32nd floor. They're not going to keep weapons and guns or explosives from being brought into the actual event itself. Here's the thing that I would be advising President Trump at this point with the soft targets, if I may, Tucker, very quickly. The purpose of, or what makes Israeli security really work well, we realize you can't get total security. It's impossible. So we use what's called multi-layers. And multi-layering means by stacking layers of as many different levels as possible, it would take a multi-failure event for this idiot to be able to open fire. I agree that a designated marksman in elevated positions is definitely something you want to have when you have a hotel overlooking, 90 floors or 80 floors or 60 floors overlooking a crowd of 22,000 people. But this is how long it takes for me to check a bag. Excuse me, sir. Could you do me a favor? I need you to open that up for me, and then the valet will take that up to your room for me. Thank you so much. And if you could, we're just going to have you, if you could have your ID ready when you check in, and all of your guests, they just need to show IDs when you check in. It literally takes a minute.
You're the politest security guard I've ever dealt with in the Middle East.
I
will say that's not the way it actually works. Sorry, I've spent a lot of time there. Wait, but hold on, Dan. Is someone thinking deeply about why this is happening? Before we turn the country into a police state to avoid things like this, maybe we should know why these things are recurring. Are there big brains working on that question?
I hope so, because the most troubling part of this story, since I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning doing commentary on this, is the troubling lack of a motive at this point. I mean, at this point in the game, I know it's in its infancy, the investigation, but I assure you behind the scenes, social media postings, financial transactions, friends and family networks, people are being interviewed. The fact that nothing's leaked out yet about any kind of a substantial motive is deeply troubling. But I assure you, yes, the best experts from federal, state, and local law enforcement are looking at this right now to find out what the heck is going on.
Yeah, because something's going on in American society that it has nothing to do with guns, it has to do with attitudes or something, and I think it's worth figuring out. Gentlemen, thank you for that. I appreciate it. As we were just saying, the FBI is still trying to determine the motive behind all of this. What exactly are investigators looking for, and what do they know already? For that, we're joined on set by retired FBI Special Agent Tim Clementi. Tim, is this as confusing to you as it is to everyone else watching?
Absolutely, and I think it's just as confusing for all FBI agents, anybody that's possibly involved in this investigation. Ordinarily, by this point in an investigation, hours or minutes in, there's some kind of a motive that's evident.
Yes.
If the person is yelling Allahu Akbar and saying this is for ISIS, then we know that it's probably for ISIS.
And then the authorities say, well, we don't really know, but of course everyone really does know. But is this one of those cases where everyone really doesn't know?
I think this is one of those cases, but I don't think we can totally discount what ISIS has said. I'm a terrorism expert. I've worked Islamic terrorism for many years around the world. I was in the Middle East last week. I can tell you that ISIS doesn't ordinarily make false claims when it comes to responsibility. They may have done some where they brag a little bit or they take a little more credit than they should have, but generally the way ISIS works is a much more loosely organized infrastructure. It's not like joining the Marine Corps. My son is down at Marine Corps boot camp at Parris Island right now. He joined the Marine Corps. He goes through a set number of days at Parris Island, goes through the whole process. You don't do that to join ISIS. To join ISIS, you make a pledge of fealty to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. You say the Shahada, which is one of the 5 pillars of faith of Islam. That's it. You are now a member of ISIS. You can do it privately. You can do it by email. You can do it over a phone call. Or you can do it over months and years of communication with ISIS. And so it is possible, though it is remote, it is possible that this individual, wanting the fame and fortune of being the most prolific serial killer or mass killer in American history, that must have been his goal. Maybe he did align himself with ISIS at the last minute just for that little extra bit of infamy.
It's
Who
just
knows?
hard to believe that someone would go through this level of preparation. For that, you'd think that there would have to be some ideological or religious commitment Not that there's an obvious one, but
there doesn't appear to be one in this case, ideological, religious, or political. It doesn't appear that he had any of those motivations, which are common for individuals doing things like this.
So what about his girlfriend? I mean, not that we know, but if you were one of the investigators on this case, how closely would you be looking at her?
No human being exists in a vacuum. This individual did not. Obviously, if he's living with a woman, she's now traveling, she's overseas, quite convenient for the fact that he's doing this heinous act and she's overseas. Maybe the two facts are unrelated, but the fact is she knows a lot about this person. She knows a lot about his personality, what may have changed in recent days, weeks, or months, and what might have led up to him either A, recently stockpiling additional weapons and ammunition for such an act, or knowing that he had some intentions to do something horrible. She may not have known the act or the time and place, but she clearly would have known the man she's living with is evolving in some way.
Well, sure. I mean, this was not a fit of rage, obviously.
No.
Senator Clemente, thank you. Really interesting.
Thank you, Tucker.
Hillary Clinton and other Democrats have used the shootings of last night to demand new gun control legislation. After the break, we'll talk to one of those Democrats and continue to cover every new development from this baffling and horrifying story out of Las Vegas. We'll be right back. Hillary Clinton wasted not a second leveraging the attacks in Las Vegas. This morning she tweeted, quote, "The crowd fled at the sound of gunshots. Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer, which the NRA wants to make easier to get." Clinton then added, without a trace of irony, "Our grief is not enough. We must put politics aside, stand up to the NRA, and work together to try to stop this from happening again." Tammy Bruce is a radio show host, and she joins us tonight. Tammy, what was your response to Hillary Clinton's tweet?
Well, it was shocking, and it was also ghoulish. She put out that tweet at about 7:15 in the morning Eastern Time. The police in Las Vegas were still removing bodies as of 2 p.m. Pacific Time. We also know that not everyone had died right up until we still had more deaths. This is a woman without any details, without any elements of information, moving immediately into a political framework and immediately going into the pet issue. Now, look, Americans know that, as you've discussed your entire show here, that we have a problem, that we're going to be dealing with what caused this and the issue of the firearms. But when you go to the element of the guns, what it does is it sucks all the air out of the room, Tucker, to deal with the underlying major issue, which is the human condition that drives this issue. And just as one example, Mayo Clinic says 70% of people in America are on a prescription drug. Opioids and antidepressants being the majority of them. Over 50% of Americans are on at least 2 prescription drugs. The things that we never discuss, which is the nature of what would push someone over a ledge like this in the modern age, never is addressed because we all get moved in by politicians to this issue. And you know, we're going to find out what made this an automatic weapon. We're going to address that, but it immediately divides. It immediately removes the compassion within the nature of what we should be doing today. And I think Americans, this is exactly what Americans are tired of.
So flesh that out a little bit, and I should just state the obvious, which is I'm hardly a doctor, and I have no evidence that prescription drug use has anything to do with this. But I've long suspected that there probably are effects. If you have a huge percentage of the country on mind-altering drugs, why wouldn't their behavior change?
Well, at least we need to begin to ask. And because we don't. No, we don't ask that question. In addition to, as you've brought up in your program, the issue of media, the nature of the horrible, bloody carnage that we've been watching for years since September 11th, 2001, if we're becoming inured in a certain way. But this is the human condition. This is what we have to deal with. But then there's also the hypocrisy of Washington and of someone like Mrs. Clinton, who in that Tennessee church shooting where one woman was murdered, 7 injured, and the massacre only stopped because of heroic usher. She has said, I found this hard to believe, but it's true, nothing about that particular attack. And if the issue really is about guns, we don't see a consistency in this. And in the meantime, we struggle as a society to want to find the solutions as we elevate the heroes that we see in the midst of something like this. And this is also, again, what Americans are seeing about the condition of our society, how politicians are not necessarily saying and doing the right thing, and how we're tired of being divided in this regard.
I would like to get to the deeper questions. I think it's a really smart point. Tammy, thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Congressman Eric Swalwell is a Democrat representing Northern California, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Of course, thanks for me.
So Hillary Clinton's tweet was, "The crowd fled at the sound of gunshots. Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer." Why would a silencer have made the deaths the higher number of deaths?
Well, first, Tucker, you know, my heart aches and my hands pray for the victims.
Amen. With
deep gratitude for the first responders. If they ran into a building not knowing where he was shooting, I think her point is Congress is considering not doing more to prevent mass shootings, but actually the only legislation around firearms is to allow silencers. And I think a lot of the concert goers...
What does that have to do with this, though? She said, imagine the deaths.
Maybe they wouldn't have heard the gunshots and more people would have died.
But see, I guess that's what bothers me, when policymakers weigh in on things about which they know nothing. So a silencer would not silence a .223 on automatic fire. It might suppress it some, but it's loud as hell. You have to wear earplugs, even with a suppressor on the end.
And with the
That's
concert
fine.
going on,
so most people might not know that, but if you're going to weigh in on it, and we're all sort of obligated to take your opinion seriously, maybe you should know what you're talking about, but she doesn't. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's emblematic of this entire debate. Nobody pushing for gun control can name a single piece of gun control legislation that would have prevented this or any other shooting, unless I'm mistaken, unless you've got one.
Well, it's still early. It hasn't even been 24 hours.
I totally agree then. Why are all these Democrats jumping up and down about the national tragedy of the NRA and we need more gun control? What gun control exactly would have ended this?
Well, I think when you watch so many people who are helpless and running, you think that our lawmakers under the Capitol Dome we're not helpless. Before the trigger is squeezed, you're actually able to do something. So whether it's universal background checks, whether it's ammunition restrictions, whether it's making sure we don't have silencers, or, of course, making sure that a weapon of war is only in the hand of a warrior.
Stop! You're doing exactly what you just conceded is false and unhelpful. You're throwing so-called silencers into it when we both know that that would have had no effect at all. So, look, you're a lawmaker. Hillary Clinton tried to be the president of the United States, came pretty close. Don't people like you and her have an obligation to know what you're talking about before you try and change our laws?
I know what I'm talking about, and I look at the fear that people have, and I think they expect from us to at least have a dialogue. You know, let's have a task force of Republicans and Democrats.
But it should be a fact-based dialogue, not a... Of course. Because this isn't a dialogue. This is a soliloquy designed to make the rest of us angry and fearful. A dialogue is when I say, here's what I believe and here's why. But that's not what she's engaging in. That's not what Senator Ben Cardin is like. We need to ban automatic weapons. They're already banned. They've been banned since the Great Depression. Like, these people have no idea what they're talking about. Why don't they be quiet until they learn something?
I think a lot of us are tired of just being quiet. And I think there are a lot of good Republican ideas around mental health. And the last guest mentioned prescription drugs. Let's talk about all of that. But let's do more than just be silent.
Okay, I'm totally for that. I'm for a real conversation. Something strange is going on in America. I'm 48. This was not a feature of my childhood. This is a new thing, and something is causing it. But the prescription from the left is always the same. Ban certain guns, ban certain bullets, ban certain magazines, silencers. And yet they don't feel an obligation to explain how that would solve the problem because they know it wouldn't, because that's not their agenda.
So
and that's what scares me.
Tucker, tonight, Congressman John Lewis, Mike Thompson, John Larson are asking Speaker Ryan, let's just have a bipartisan task force. Put everything on the table. Let's look at the facts of this shooting and others, but let's do something and show that we're not helpless. We can actually address this issue, and hopefully in a bipartisan way.
Why would I trust someone who points to silencers within hours of this shooting as the cause or an exacerbating factor? That's like moronic.
Because silencers would make more shootings like this actually easier to accomplish. And Congress now...
But how exactly does that happen? I mean, so you're sticking with that talking point? Because that's not true. Have you ever fired a weapon with a suppressor on it? What kind?
So, AR-15.
With a suppressor on it?
I was a prosecutor, Carlson, Tucker, so we'd go out and look at the weapons that were taken off the streets.
So you fired an AR-15, shoots 5.56.
It doesn't silence completely. It suppresses the sound, which shot spotters won't pick up. It makes it harder for victims to hear it. And so it's just another tool to disguise.
No, but are you being serious? So you've actually fired the rifle with a suppressor on it, and you're telling me that you didn't have to wear earplugs when you did that?
It suppresses the sound. But Tucker, the point
Wait, did you have to wear earplugs when you did it?
You should always wear earplugs if you're shooting for safety.
Because you're going to go deaf otherwise, because that's how loud. I just shot one the other day. It's super loud. So if you've done that, you can't look at me straight in the face and say, they would be undetectable. Are you kidding?
But with a concert blaring like it would be a lot less noisy. But Tucker, the point here is, let's just convene. Let's have a conversation.
Okay, but we have to have a rational conversation. We can't have people pointing to silencers or flash suppressors and saying that's the problem.
Republicans imminently will vote to allow silencers. That will make it easier.
They protect people's hearing. It would have nothing nothing to do with this shooting. That's insane, and you know it. You fired the rifle yourself. That's not the answer. Can we be real?
No, dialogue is the answer.
Right, dialogue. That's what we're doing. Congressman, thank you for coming on, as always.
Pleasure.
We're continuing to provide all the latest developments as the horrible attacks in Las Vegas. Details are still coming in. We'll be right back. Most people have the decency to be horrified when innocent people die. That's their instinctive reaction. But there are those who are so ideological, so addled by political fervor that a mass killing means nothing if they think the victims voted differently from the way they did. In the hours after the tragedy in Las Vegas last night, CBS legal executive Haley Geftman-Gold explained on Facebook that she had no sympathy for the dead because they were likely Republicans. Quote, "I'm actually not even sympathetic because country music fans often are Republican gun toters," she wrote. Well, after her words ricocheted around the internet, Geftman-Gold was canned by CBS earlier today. But make no mistake, there is a growing number of people who think as she does, even if they're smart enough to keep their thoughts hidden. That may be the real disaster here, by the way. This country can survive mass shootings, it has before, but it will not survive having political factions that deny the basic humanity of their opponents, and you're seeing that a lot. With more on the ground in Las Vegas, we're joined by Fox News' Claudia Cowan, who is there. Claudia.
Well, Tucker, when you consider the scope of this tragedy with so many dead and wounded, it's really no surprise that so many people in this community feel the need to grieve and mourn together. And that's exactly what's happening here at Las Vegas City Hall. Right now, a group of singers is working to lift spirits. Earlier, the crowd heard from speakers offering words of support and sympathy. And this is one of many prayer vigils happening here and across the country, including in Nashville, where country singers are paying condolences to the victims of last night's massacre who were just out to have a good time at a country music concert. And investigators say they're still processing the concert venue as well as 3 other crime scenes, trying to understand why 64-year-old Stephen Paddock committed what's being called the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history. His family seems baffled. The victims and their loved ones are certainly mystified. And Las Vegas has a broken heart. But this city is resilient, Tucker. And tonight, #VegasStrong is trending. Back to you.
Claudia Cowan in Las Vegas. Thanks a lot, Claudia. Well, that's it for us tonight. But, of course, our coverage here on Fox of the shooting in Las Vegas will continue. There's a lot we don't know. This may be the most baffling crime of its kind in memory. Our team is investigating new leads. We're going to bring you updates throughout the night. Truly, the people on this case are confused. We cannot overstate that, and that never happened. So this is quite a story. I want to say a word to those very brave first responders last night. They risked their lives, and their swift race right into a dangerous situation saved others. And so we're grateful for them. Our prayers, of course, go out to the victims and their family. We'll see you tomorrow night. Sean Hannity is up next as our live coverage of all of this continues in tonight. Good night from Washington. We'll see you tomorrow.